I am Daniel Ikis, and welcome to Food 101. Food, people. Let's talk about food. And today, I have my special guest. She is an impact investor, advisor, board member, and the CEO of Oobli.
Nice to meet. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, welcome to Food 101. Miss Ali, can you please introduce yourself?
I'm the CEO of Oobli. Oobli is an exciting sweet protein fermentation technology company that's looking to change the world in obesity and diabetes and make a different kind of sweet tooth solution available to all of us. I'm excited to be here today.
Yes. Do you think this is a breakthrough?
I do. I do. I have spent a career working at the intersection of healthy living and technology. And I think it's very rare to end up where you can kind of see a triple win as a solution. And we're in food. And so that triple win is what we're making tastes great, is something you actually want, which is usually the thing that evades most of our food technology solutions. It's a game changer for our bodies. And the way we produce it in order to make it accessible at a price point throughout the world is also a sustainable solution. So it's really got all three legs of the stool of breakthrough for me.
Yes, definitely, indeed. Oobli, what behind the name of the company?
You know, Oobli is really, the word is a made up name, but it's inspired by one of our proteins. There's about 20 known sweet proteins in the world today. And one of those comes from the Oobli fruit protein. It's spelled slightly differently. It's a French word, Oubli, sometimes with an E. And when we did our research and we started understanding where sweet proteins really originally came from, we also learned that villages in West Africa, where some of the earliest sweet proteins were found, used to refer to the fruit as something that they thought was so sweet they would forget their mother's milk. And that's where the Oobli name came from, because it means forgetfulness in French. And so that's what we were inspired by the name.
Yes, sounds interesting. So, what is the mission and vision of Oobli?
Our reason for being, or sort of why we get up every day, is to think about ways to bend the global health curve around what is sort of crippling statistics today in diabetes specifically, but just a lot of body complexities around the way our bodies are somewhat of a mismatch on our food supply today. And our mission is not only to have an impact on that, and we like to say we'd like to deliver healthy sweets that can be as good for your body as we know sweets are good for our soul, since they're in almost every one of our celebrations. The company was an R&D company. We're brand new to being a commercial company where we actually have products available for people to purchase. And that has only been new since the very end of last calendar year. And at that time, we launched with our commercial name, Oobli. Before that, as an R&D company, we were called Joywell Foods, which is a perfectly lovely name, but it didn't really capture the spirit of what we think consumers should be so excited about with sweet proteins. So we launched with our commercial name as we got ready to introduce our first products, which, as I think you know, is chocolate in the market today.
So, do you think Oobli is more catchy for the consumer?
We did a lot of research, like most people do with names, and we love the history, the sort of village story that I told you. But we also, to be honest with you, I'm a big believer in great consumer brands. If they have to tell you how to feel, they're probably not doing their job. And so Joywell Foods was nice, but if it tells you how to feel, it's not as just being a word that inspires you. And Oobli, full of its rounded curves and big oohs and drools, is just makes you happy and smiley and feels like there's abundance. And that's really what we want to be inspired by, and giving people back a pathway to their sweet tooth that is better for their body and can be even good for the planet.
Yes, definitely. What is the main vision of Oobli in the 21st century?
It's really to rehabilitate our food supply around the role of sugar. Sugar, a lot like Well, do the comparison to fossil fuel. Nobody will deny it's a really important part of our ecosystem, right? But we know we need to use it more responsibly and therefore upgrade its role. So when we use it, we use less of it and use it with more impact. Sugar is actually very similar. It's a really important part of food supply, even in fermentation. You can't do any fermentation without sugar. But today, we overproduce sugar. We use too much acreage for sugar in a way that makes it a top 10 harmful crop throughout the world. And that's been true now for decades. We also know that we grow it in too precious of ecosystems that we can't afford to keep treating that way. So the opportunity of sweet proteins happens on a couple of fronts. On one side of house, we can actually replace the role of sugar as an input to the production process, but the thing that goes in large volume into all our favorite foods, like your favorite candy bar, can be a sweet protein. And that's done from a fermentation process versus farming and acreage, which is sustainable and takes back, just to give you an example, for every 1% sugar reduction, we can take back about 650,000 acres of sugar cane. So there's a big planet play. But it's also because sweet proteins are 2,000 to 5,000 times sweeter on a weight basis than sugar. So a little goes a long way. So if you imagine that, pretend I had a 16-ounce soda, a typical size of a favorite guilty pleasure drink with a lot of sugar, and that would have on average 14 to 17 cubes of sugar in it, a lot, right? If you're in North America.
Yes.
We can replace that with about 0.03 milligrams of a sweet protein, and the rest is water. So we can also just use a lot less to accomplish what we want to have as the mouth taste, but in a way that's not only a ton better for our planet, but a ton better for our bodies.
If Ethan Brown and Elon Musk combating climate change, is it Miss Alwyn combating the health crisis nowadays?
Yes.
Wow, it's a breakthrough, Miss Ali.
Well,
Congratulations.
I always say to my teams, as big as the challenges that Elon Musk is going after, if 40 to 50% of the world's population is suboptimal health, we're not going to solve any of those problems. So this becomes almost a precursor to solving any of those other big problems.
So, do you think you will be the next Elon Musk? Cross my finger.
Well, I would certainly like to have the size of impact in the field that I'm interested in that he's had. That's for sure.
Yeah, because Elon Musk, this same footstep. You sold your company. Elon Musk sold this PayPal, and you sold your Giggle, and then you are building this humongous breakthrough that everybody can, benefit.
Yeah, it's exciting. Listen, I like to think, and I know you're like-minded. Life's too short to just do things to produce money. There's so many big opportunities that are not only good for the economy, but good for the world. And that's why I consider myself not only an impact investor, but actually an impact executive. It's just where I like to spend my time.
Yes, definitely. So, are you a wide reader? Because I read the biography of Elon Musk, and at the age of 8 or 9, he's this really a bookworm. Are you that type of a person?
I am. I grew up very much a bookworm. I that's probably why, in addition to a master's in business, I also have a law degree, because that's sort of what it was if you were growing up then. I was a big reader. And today I'm probably equal read as podcast. I like to listen a lot now too. That's my new favorite commuting strategy, is to always be listening. And so I like the freedom that podcast gives us that reading never did. But yeah, I've always been a big reader.
Can I invite you to my other podcast, Book 101 Review, and let's talk about your favorite books?
Oh, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. I've been reading Safar's Loon Shots, and it's a high recommend if you haven't read it. It's about innovation, and it's a really good book.
Wow, sounds interesting. So before we go on, Miss Ali, I just want to shout out to the people listening in Canada. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. I'm number 12 on Apple Podcasts. Morocco at number 1. Wow, thank you, Morocco. And of course, in Sri Lanka, I'm number 22. And Turkey at number 60. Cyprus at 69. Vietnam at 67. Philippines at 92. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower different kind of cuisine, interviews, and food breakthrough like sweet protein. So, Miss Ali, what are sweet proteins?
Sweet proteins are, think of them as a trickster sugar. Uh, most people think, most scientists believe that they evolved with humans. So they've been found in places that date back to early human evolution in places like West Africa and Southeast Asia. And they evolved in fruits and berries that were in precious ecosystems and hard to reach places. And they were dying because they were too hard to reach a place that was attracting sort of the large primates, apes and gorillas, to come eat them. And they couldn't afford the caloric load of carrying a carbohydrate to be sweet or attractive. But so they evolved, as nature is usually so smart, to create this one tiny little protein, which was much more sort of calorically efficient for them. But this protein was designed to actually trick a large primate only. They only work on humans, apes, and gorillas. T1 and R1 taste receptor when they ate it, which is the thing in our mouth, in our tongues, that actually triggers the brain to say, I just got sugar. I just got an energy source. Like, right, we're all biologically predisposed to chase it. So that's what actually triggers it. But the moment you swallow it, unlike every other sugar alternative out there today, which are small molecules, it is a protein. It's not like a protein. It is a protein. It's a large molecule. The moment you swallow it, it unfolds. And so then it moves through your digestive tract, not triggering any glycemic index changes or having an impact on the gut microbiome. So you think about that today, where we all love our sweet tooth. We're hardwired to love sugar. There's nothing to feel bad about that, but our bodies weren't designed for it to be recklessly abundant in our diet. And yet here we go back to nature, having come up with probably the perfect solution, a protein that tricks us into thinking, gives our brain sort of the hit it needs, but moves through our body as a protein, which our bodies are extremely good at handling protein, since 50% of our body weight is actually protein.
Really interesting. What do sweet proteins taste like?
And, they're trickster sugars, so they taste like sugar. The thing I always tell people that I get most excited about is, think of the last 20 years in the world. There's been a lot of important innovation around how do we do things other than sugar to satisfy this biological desire for sweeter and sweeter. And we know there's a lot of sugar and sugar alternatives. But the problem with most of them is our brain really knows they're not sugar, right away. Our brain's kind of a fine-tuned instrument when it comes to sweetness. And we immediately know, hey, somebody just gave me something that's a fake, right? What sweet proteins are really good at is not triggering that. They're really good at making you think it's real. And that's how they evolved. And the only way they survived in these precious ecosystems was being good at tricking an ape or a gorilla to think it was. So in a perfect world, if I put it into a product and I give you tell me your favorite sweet tooth product, and I reformulate it with sweet proteins, I may leave a little sugar in, but let's just say I take out 90%. In just about every product, 4 out of 5 consumers we test can't tell the difference.
Very well said, Miss Ali. So, can sweet protein replace all of the sugar in food products?
No, we don't know yet. Sugar plays a lot of roles, right? Sugar is a sweetener. Sugar's got a lot of functional roles. And to be honest with you, I don't know that our goal is necessarily to make it go away. It's to recalibrate its role within our diet. So what we do know is, if any one protein, I'm currently able to sell products today in the US with one protein that has self-GRAS, I can take about 70% out of 70 to 75% out of any particular product without changing the taste. I leave a little bit of sugar in because when I'm working with just one protein, it might be a slight delay to your tongue that your brain will notice, or it might have a slight linger, right? And I'm not trying to give you a low sugar taste. I'm just trying to give you your favorite chocolate, but better for your body. What I know, though, is that when I can have 2 or 3 proteins through the regulatory process, already through our testing, I can tell that I can get closer to probably 80 to 90% without changing by combining proteins. And they kind of act like a toolkit. And our thesis for that is that these plants and berries, there's about 20 different species. They have a lot of similarities, and they were all trying to solve the same problem of survival. So they're about 60% the same from a homology point of view, but they're about 40% different. And so they were tackling how do you trick the taste receptors differently. And so when you put them together, they do a more complete job because some of them are solving other parts of it better than others. So we're really excited about that because we actually think there's probably a real pathway to getting 80 to 90% sugar reductions without changing taste profiles, which we think is pretty darn exciting.
Definitely. How are sweet protein source made?
So the sweet proteins actually in their natural form, right? They're in fruits and berries in places like West Africa and in Southeast Asia. You could never agriculturally grow those without being, one, a climate disaster, and two, really only making them available to the very elite in the world, because each one of these fruits and berries produces one tiny little protein. So the way we produce them using, this is kind of, I like to say it's the marriage of the best of nature with the best of technology. We use the nature identical DNA from the proteins as they've been discovered throughout nature. But then we put it into a yeast in our precision fermentation environment. So kind of think like you would brew beer or make cheese or brew or ferment wine. And we use a Pichia yeast, which is a very common food yeast. And we teach that yeast how to produce that protein. And afterwards, when we strain it, we get rid of the yeast, and all we have left is this exact same sweet protein that is found in nature. And that becomes sort of the ingredient, if you will, that goes into foods to replace sugar.
Wow, interesting. So they think in the future, sweet proteins can be available all over the world.
Yeah, more important than nation, right? Globally, for sure. Yes, my goal is this. Fermentation is a really important unlock to sweet proteins we've known about, but people haven't been able to produce them in any way that would be a viable option at price points that are necessary for us to bend the global health curve in diabetes and obesities. And that's actually what I get most excited about. This is a global solution with global pricing accessibility because of fermentation.
Wow, really interesting. Are sweet proteins sustainable and climate friendly?
They are. I mean, I think sweet proteins in and of themselves are natural, right? But what makes our sweet proteins as we produce them climate friendly is very similar to most other precision fermentation solutions, where we use a much smaller amount of the problem crop, say sugar, and we can use any form of sugar. So whatever is a local crop, we don't have to move it all around the world. Fermentation can be done cost effectively in any region as the feedstock or the input, but then we produce the protein rather than agriculturally in really harsh environments through fermentation. And we can do that in a way that just gives massive acreage and is a huge carbon offset in our planet today. And that's what's kind of generally excited about fermentation and food tech in general. I think what makes it particularly attractive with sweet proteins is the fact that sweet proteins just get the job done a lot better than sugar. They're 2,000 to 5,000 times sweeter on a weight basis. So a little goes a very long way. So frankly, we can have the big sweet tooth we have, and we need a whole lot less. We have to produce a whole lot less to solve it.
Before you open to the public, what are the process that you did so that you make sure that the people who consume the products are safe? Did you do a trials?
We do. And we have one big advantage, I think, here, but we do take seriously. I mean, it'd be hard to say you're going to go try to help bend the global health curve and then produce something that was toxic, right? So we take the safety and the health and safety extremely seriously. But one big advantage we have is sweet proteins came out of nature, right? They evolved naturally. And so there are, although it's not written history, there's long history of villages that have eaten these in small communities in Western Africa and Southeast Asia. Because there isn't the written record of that, so we sort of based on that, we expected to find that our bodies handled these very well. And we always joke and say, we sort of expected our research to be the study of boring results, which is what you hope when you're doing toxicology, right? And very predictably safe. And that's exactly what we found. We do actually undertake the food safety maximum toxicology studies in every market for every protein that we enter. So we've only completed the first one in the US. We're in the middle of taking that set of toxicology results and going into multiple other markets. And we have 3 other proteins going through the process this year.
So how many years did you do the trials?
We spent really, well, the company's was an R&D, this is our 7th year. And we've spent the last 6 years in R&D and about the last year and a half taking our first, I would say, protein all the way through every part of the regulatory standard, and about 2 others halfway through.
So in sum up, do you think this is enough that anyone can eat the product that contain sweet protein?
Yeah, I do. The reason that we feel so confident about it, especially in the world where there's been a lot of concern about sugar and sugar replacements, is very different than everything that's been produced today, whether they're chemical or natural or synthetic, it doesn't matter. Those are all small molecules. And what we know about small molecules is we have a lot to learn about how our bodies are handling those. That's not true with large molecules such as proteins, where we actually have the history of human medicine understands the role of protein in our bodies, and these are just proteins. So there is something that we walk into it with a lot more medical history than we do when we've made something in the world that's a small molecule and our tissues are absorbing it.
Yes, definitely. You know what, Miss Ali, I always watching this medical series like ER or Doctor House. Okay, let's say do a scenario. A sweet protein to certain people with diabetes or something with blood pressure. Did you do a trials?
You can't do human trials with like clinical studies until you first meet all the safety standards of the actual thing, because that would be unsafe, right?
Yeah.
So phase 1 is to go through and you use rats and you do rat studies to test toxicology studies and allergenicity studies and all the way our body consumes things. What we are excited to do now, and we haven't announced it yet, but we are talking to the 2 bigger medical centers in the US that have big food as medicine or food nutrition programs. And we're excited to put our solution into some of their clinical studies to actually use in some of the insulin response comparison studies that they do. Now, the reason they're so excited is they know that proteins don't produce insulin response, but they've never had one that can actually play a role in their studies that gives somebody something that's sweet. So we're excited about that. We're going to pursue it. It's not a pathway because what we're producing comes out of nature. We're not genetically designing anything. There is history here. It's not a pathway that's required, but it is a pathway that we're super excited to just pursue every type of information that we can to see if we can use sweet proteins to help facilitate just beyond everyday food as medicine or general healthy diet, but potentially even other applications.
Wow, very well said, Miss Ali. So if you describe sweet proteins in 5 adjectives, what is it?
5 adjectives, huh?
Yes.
I would say sweet, healthy, sustainable, surprising, and amazing.
Yes. And I think one more. Breakthrough.
Yes, yeah, you did the best one, but maybe you add them all up and you get breakthrough.
Yes, definitely, people. Sweet proteins is the solution of this 21st century for the health crisis that we are facing right now. So, Miss Ali, what is your debut product for sweet proteins?
Well, we launched chocolate bars, dark chocolate bars, about a month ago. And they're available at oobli.com. And lots of people are having fun and tasting them. And we will, due to popular demand, actually add milk chocolate and expand the category. But our big launch, and really the reason I hesitate, is we love our chocolate, but it was always intended to kind of be more a place for people just to start tasting. What we're really most excited about is we're really going after beverages. And the reason for that is when you look at the global daily added sugar problem, for what people are struggling with and where we're just getting more than our bodies were designed to handle, it comes mostly in our drinks. We drink more of our sugar problem than not today. It's kind of, think of it this way. It's easier for you and I to know that we probably should pass up a piece of cake after dessert when we don't need it one night than it is to realize just how much sugar is in most of the drinks if you're buying ready to drink products now. So you have to be really diligent on that. And so that's kind of crept up on people. And it's one of the biggest things you hear doctors complain and are frustrated about with their patients, because they're really hard habits to change. So with that in mind, we are launching, and it's just a couple weeks away. We're really excited. Our first line of sweet teas. And those will be everything from a peach tea and a lemon tea to a mango yuzu and an Arnold Palmer. Think kind of like what Arizona or Snapple or an Honest Tea did, where the typical 16 ounce would have anywhere from 20 grams of sugar up to, believe it or not, 50. And ours will have about 5 to 6 grams of sugar. Only 2 of those are a little bit of agave and the rest are fruit.
Refreshing for the summer, people.
Yes. Perfect
Definitely.
time for spring.
Yes, perfectly for spring and summer. And why chocolate as a first product of Sweet Proteins of Oobli?
Honestly, it was kind of a practical decision because there's no product category that we can't work in Sweet Proteins. And we'd sort of decided we were going to go after drinks because it's the biggest part of the problem. But when we figured out when we were likely to get through the FDA and what our timing is, we realized we would be launching sweet teas right around the holidays, which isn't a great time for refreshing spring, summer drinks. And so we said, why don't we've made a lot of chocolate in our sampling and in our practice tests and sort of what we call our model food system. Why don't we do a small line of chocolate and make it giftable, and people really understand sweets when you talk about things like chocolate, and let people start to try, and then we'll do our big launch when we come into the right season. So that was really what it is. What I'm most excited about is there really isn't a product category that Sweet Proteins can't be a solution in. Each one has different trade-offs and complexities. In fact, I would say chocolate's harder to do than drinks, because in chocolate, 50% of the weight of a bar is actually the function of sugar. It's made up of sugar. So you have to do more than replace sweetness. You have to add something in. In our case, we made ours with an acacia fiber to give more fiber in your sweet, which is also an important counterbalance on things like diabetes. But honestly, beverages are quicker because the only role that sugar plays that you're taking out in a drink is typically just sweetness, and the rest is just water.
Yes, definitely. So after chocolate, beverage, what next?
Well, we will more for sure. I will tell you that we have a model food system that kind of represents categories from, let's say, beverages to dairy to confectionery to baked goods to frozen goods, you name it. And we've got sort of what we call MVPs or prototype products in every single one of those. But we will produce some of our own drinks that are our big focus right now with a fun offering on chocolate. But we'll also partner with some companies that are already making products that are very motivated to reduce sugar and let them sort of rehabilitate their product. I can't announce the ones we will launch this year, but we're very excited to talk about those later, hopefully, if not summer, then fall. And you'll see them across every food category.
Yes, can you come back and promote all those products?
I would love to.
Food 101 want to be part of your breakthrough products. Oh my goodness. It's something that we need to tell to the world.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree. I'm very passionate. I mean, it's a privilege to do this job because it's an important job and there's so much possibility. And we think we really can can help not just consumers, but companies, right? So that's a great position to be in. We'd all like to live better and healthier and do it in a way that makes economic sense and is better for the planet. That's just, you just don't get many of those opportunities where it's, I always hear from consumer research, the most common feedback I get is it sounds too good to be true. And what I tell everybody is it is, but we'll put our money where our mouth is. Go sign up, learn about oobli.com and be aware of when we announce products and taste them. We offer free samples all the time, and we love to have people taste, and tasting is believing.
Yes, definitely. I just have a question regarding the review of chocolate. I don't know what flavor is that, but they said there is an aftertaste.
There is one review, you're right, that says that. Three things. We're all influenced by the culture and community around us. And in today's world, there's been a lot of types of sugar alternatives produced over the last few years. And one of the common features that many of them have is a different taste that happens after you've eaten it, right? An aftertaste. So one of the first things, whenever you introduce anything that is focused on reducing sugar, people associate the words from the other things they know. What I would tell you is that we don't have an aftertaste. And in fact, when we do our job well, you don't notice anything different. But for some people that are highly attuned to sweetness, maybe have already reduced sugar out of their diet, really know the fine nuance, what they will notice is a slight linger. And what I mean by that is it's not a different taste. It's not a bad taste. It's not an off taste, but the sweetness sits in your mouth a little bit longer. And here's why. Biologically, the way sweet proteins work is slightly different than the way any small molecule, which is every sugar or sugar alternative, work. When a sugar or sugar alternative hits your mouth, it immediately dissolves and goes into your bloodstream. What a protein, which was this trickster protein, is doing is it actually binds with those taste receptors. So it takes about half a second longer, maybe a second for some people. And that's why sometimes we leave about 1 gram of sugar in. So you get that immediate hit that people are used to. Their brain, again, is really fine-tuned instrument. And why some people, again, for us, the research shows, and we research this on every product we do, that 4 out of 5 consumers don't notice anything. But if somebody does, they might notice a slight linger because it will stay sweet a little bit after you eat it. And that's because it binds. And that's just a momentary difference. But again, our brains are really fine-tuned instruments when it comes to sugar.
Definitely. So it means to say that your product, there's nothing wrong with it. It so happened that it depends to the taste bud of people taking it.
I think that's right. I mean, I've been in food and consumer goods long enough to know we're a pretty spoiled planet, right? We all have a lot of choices, and therefore we have a lot of segments and a lot of preferences. So there's always going to be some that like things more than others. What I can tell you is the research and the statistics tell me that when we do the product development right, 4 out of 5, and sometimes even 9 out of 10 can't distinguish anything that was taken out or changed in their product. And that's the goal I'm going for. I can really probably never get 100%. And there are differences by individual.
Miss Ali, do you think negative reviews make the product perfect?
I think negative reviews, if they're done in an open way, which means they were really somebody who bought it and felt that and wrote the review. And unfortunately, not all reviews are that way today. They're good for an open economy, right? There's no feedback from me that isn't a gift, right? We're in the middle of breakthrough technology, introducing phenomenally important solutions. And if I thought that I was done or perfect in everything I do today, I should hang up my tools. What I know is I'm exactly the opposite of that. We're at the very beginning, and we'll always be making more products, better products, offering ways for other people to make changes to their products and better products, and hopefully over time have solutions for everybody.
So, Miss Ali, are you ready to be copied? For sure, if this be breakthrough and phenomenal, for sure, other company will copy.
Well, they do say that copy is the best form of flattery, right?
Definitely.
So I think someday, I think we're not the only ones in the world who are looking at sweet proteins. What I can tell you is I joined a couple phenomenal technologists who have invested decades of their career building the ability to actually produce something that people have looked at for 20 years and haven't been able to do. And that's getting precision fermentation to produce sweet proteins. That's an important capability. Someday, I think more people will do it. Right now, I think we have a first mover advantage of being able to take sweet proteins that people have studied now for about 20 years and never been able to produce like we can produce.
Yes, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And before we go on, Miss Ali, I want to invite you to my other podcast, Book 101 Review, in our third season with Chris Tetrablay, award-winning author and the author of the Apocalypse trilogy. And please do listen, Book 101 Review.
Great.
So, Miss Ali, according to the Fortune 500, over 10% CEO are women. How does it feel that you belong to those 10%?
Well, I'm not Fortune 500. That's only for the Fortune 500. We're back in
Yes.
venture. I think in biotech,
Oh, biotech. Okay.
biotech, I think there's less than 1% of us. Last statistic. So what I can say is I don't wake up any day being a woman first. I wake up each day being an innovator first. And I hope that I set a role model for that many more young women innovators, because the world has a lot of big, meaty problems to solve. And I think more great minds are always better than less.
Yes. And there's a great, saying that success is not measured by what you achieve, but by the obstacles you overcome. What obstacles that you overcome as a CEO?
I mean, it is when it is 1% of the industry you're in, it's lonely at times. I would say there is less of a natural network. You have to be more intentional in building it. But I don't know that I've ever known that to not be true in more of my career as a percentage, just as a female executive, right? So I don't know that I know anything but that. I would say the bigger things I've overcome are to get here, and that is, my dad had a college degree, but nobody in a generation ahead of him did, and we were all pretty simple, big farming family. I'm one of 10 kids. We had sort of big expectations to go work hard and do right in the world. Be good to your neighbors, old farming Protestant work ethic values. And I would say what I've overcome in all of that is also knowing that in order to disrupt and to create innovation at scale, you have to be able to advocate and get used to a lot of people that disagree with you and a lot of people that say no, and you get far more of those than the opposite. And that is a constant thing that you're overcoming. And I'm not sure that's unique to being a female, but it's probably got its own perspective as a female leader too.
Very well said, Miss Ali. And I read a book by Cara Cooney, When Women Rule the World, Sixth Queen of Egypt. I love this book. And it says the ancient Egypt, women reign supreme. Do you think in the 21st century, women reign supreme?
I think they should. I think I come a little bit like Ruth Bader Ginsburg's favorite quote of mine, which is, when will there be enough female Supreme Court justice? And she says, when they're all female Supreme Court justice. And everyone looks at her and says, why is that? And she goes, well, we've never questioned when it was all men. So
yes.
I hope for only more. And I say that really with the spirit of, on all the differences we all like to talk about the world and all the hard paths that anybody has. We all like the stories today. One fact is true, and that's the majority of the world's population is women, and they're the biggest minority class. So what I hope for is to see that, not that, in my life.
Yes, people, let's be equal. Men and women must be equal in terms of anything. Feminist, being feminist, people. So I'm advocating being feminist. So because in the eyes of God, men and women are equal, and that's the right thing to do. Right, Miss Ali?
I think it is. I also think the statistics bear out that we have better communities, businesses, and governments when we have diversity leading them.
Definitely. So, Miss Ali, as a woman CEO, what is your inspiring advice for those women out there to be like you?
I would say harness all the powers of what it is to be a woman, which has a lot of has taught you a lot about being aware of the situation and listening to the nonverbal cues as well as the verbal cues. And then put some of that on the shelf and remember that there is a marketplace that's dominant in how you have to succeed. And you will have to get it out of your comfort zone in some of your preferred styles of accomplishing leadership or your objectives if you actually want to be successful. And being comfortable with that and reconciling that is a really important part of the journey, a lot like reconciling the age old debate of working mother, right? I get asked all the time, is your life in balance, or was it when you were raising kids? And I always answered, not a chance in the world it was ever in balance. The question it really is, over what time period are you measuring? Over time, my life is very in balance. Probably any one given business day or week, not a chance. And I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that, what that investment and trade-off is. I like the results of what it's been to me. And that's what I would say to any aspiring young women. Be comfortable in your skin and your choices.
Yes, and you know what you want in life. Like
Yep.
Miss Ali, I want to be a CEO for sure. When you are, what age that you realize that you are good in something?
Oh, if I'm really honest with you, if you asked, I have a lot of brothers and sisters. I told you I came from a big family, and they would tell you I was kind of always a born bossy pants. So if they were here, they would tell you that I thought thought I was good at things very, very young. I was a pretty competitive ski racer. I grew up in a small town in Bozeman, Montana. And I think that was my first path to learning what competition and winning was. And I was good enough to get the bug. And that's probably part of what sort of fuels my competitive spirit. That's probably one of the ingredients of what it takes to innovate.
What is your reaction towards pitfalls?
I would say one pitfall, and I was just on a panel for women venture capital a couple weeks ago, and I said this very strongly, and I'll restate it here. There are two very common pitfalls I see women do in business. I'm going to speak as a businesswoman, as a potential CEO first and foremost. One is, in our broad cultures, women have often played supporting roles. If you let that translate into business, you will accept supporting roles, not P&L owning roles. If you want to lead and you want to drive sort of a pathway to a CEO role, you have to be a P&L leader and an owner. And therefore, you have to be willing to turn down supporting role offers. You will get them at a much higher rate than your male counterparts. And some of that's just bigger cultural context than anything that has to do with us in business today. It's deeper than that, right? But I think that's number one. Along the same lines, my number two big lesson is, wherever it started a long time ago, we know we don't have enough women in STEM. We don't know we have enough women in finance. We know we don't have enough women in math. We also know statistically, it's not because there are better or worse skills. It's just whatever it is that got us there. And what I would say to all of you is, finance is not rocket science. And I know many brilliant women doing many different things. But in business, you have to know your numbers. So put yourself in a position to be financially savvy. It's not an optional thing you can outsource. You actually have to own it. And to avoid it or to be scared of it is to create a pitfall that will be one that could take you down. I think my most important quality today is the style of leadership that I have. And that is that at the end of the day, I like people, and I sort of fundamentally have the value that more minds are usually smarter than one. So I think the qualities that I bring to leadership is, I'm comfortable with the fact that everybody I hire is smarter or better than me in their own areas. I don't feel the need to be smarter than them. I actually look for that expertise. My job is to create a framework for our shared success. And so it's the comfort to hire well beyond your own skills is number one. And I would say number two, maybe it's part of that same one, is then have a sense of servant leadership. Your job is to actually enable talent and enable the organization and the framework, not really to be the end all and be all for every decision. And I think those are really important traits for success in high growth, agile, dynamic environments.
Yes, people, Miss Ali Wing. So once again, Miss Ali, let's invite our listeners to try your products.
Please come check us out at oobli.com, OOBLI.com. We actually offer about once every month you can get free samples. It's not live right this minute, but you are more than welcome, any of you, to go order chocolates today, and drinks are coming soon. And if you want to order a chocolate, you can even use my personal code of ALI 20 and feel free to get a discount on chocolates right now.
Yes. Am I also included, Miss Ali?
You absolutely are. Anybody who listens can use that. I share it out so that I like to hear who's been listening, and you get a chance to go try with a discount some sweet protein powered chocolates.
Yes, people, let's support this breakthrough because it's really helped our health crisis right now. And this a one of a kind breakthrough in food industry. So please, Miss Ali, once again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation, and I appreciate you putting a spotlight on this important innovation.